Hello and welcome to the Business Goa show. Today we have with us a very interesting guest, someone who embodies the word business in Goa, somebody who is a youth icon, and somebody who has just completed 1 year as the president of Goa Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We have with us none other than the Shrinivas Dempo. Welcome, Baba. Welcome to the
Thank
show.
you. Thanks for having me, Arch.
Mr. Dempo, you are the third generation of Dempos to represent the chamber as president. Your illustrious grandfather Vasant Rao, your father Nagesh Bab, and now you are the helm of affairs of Goa's business, so to say. And for the first time as a chamber president, you have brought in a theme, a concept of inclusive and sustainable growth by 2047. Could you elaborate on your plans as the first citizen of Goa's business?
Good question, Harsh. First of all, I feel very humbled at the opportunity provided to me by the esteemed members of GCCI. As you rightly said, I'm the third generation. Probably the first time a third generation is entering as first amongst the equals as the president of GCCI. I deem this more as a responsibility than a privilege. And towards fulfilling that responsibility, I thought that for the first time, the Chamber of Commerce should have a theme. The theme is primarily done to drive the focus of the Chamber. That doesn't mean that we avoid all the other issues. Chamber is a policy advocacy body. It serves its membership. It serves thousands of or hundreds of members directly and thousands of members indirectly towards making Goa conducive for a very conducive business environment. Now, when you talk to me about the focus of sustainable and inclusive development, if you look at Goa as a whole, we have a lot of things going for us. We have a great coastline. We have natural resources in the form of iron ore. We have great culture. We have great environment. But I think the world is changing very fast. And one of the greatest themes today and one of the greatest opportunities and challenges today is on the climate change and sustainability front. That's why we felt the membership needs to be sensitized to this topic, and the best of resources should come to the state of Goa through a business body like Chamber, to drive home this point that businesses should be sensitized. Otherwise, what happens typically, a business gets completely bogged by its own issues of, say, cash flows, profitability, ease of doing business, and this point doesn't get driven enough. So that is the whole purpose that we are sustaining, or trying to build on this theme of sustainable and inclusive development. And the 2047 is keeping in line that the developed India is going to happen before 2047.
So, Goa as a state, as an economy, what are the challenges that the state has in competing with the other parts of the country?
I think, the good and the bad. The good is that we are a small state, we are a manageable state, we are less population. But at the same time, this becomes a disadvantage because your end market is small. There are challenges in logistics and supply chain. And being the nature of the place that it is, there is a lot of environmental sensitivity towards businesses. Now, this has a good side and this has a bad side. The good is that people are more sensitized. We don't accept any industry that comes along here. We are very, very choosy about choosing the kind of industry. But at the same time, we want the GDP of the state to be accelerated through industrial development. We want more jobs for the youth, and we want more revenues for the government to build on the infrastructure and related issues. So I think small states like Goa have its own unique challenges. So we need to follow a different model for a place like Goa, where apart from some of the manufacturing industries, we also go to service industry. So that's why I think Goa is rightly focused on sectors like tourism, which have given the kickstart to coastal line tourism, and which has really accelerated. One is the kind of jobs that are generated by the tourism industry, and also the revenues that can be generated. I'm not saying that we are still at the tip of the iceberg, and in my later conversation with you, I could probably touch on a different kind of tourism. We have to choose quality versus quantity, and I think there's a lot of scope and potential around for all the stakeholders, including the chamber, to think in those directions. But to answer your question, a small state has its unique challenges, but I think it can also capitalize on certain kind of industries which could provide to be the multiplier force for kickstarting the GDP of the state.
So, what is the GCCI doing specifically to push this agenda of having a unique business model for Goa?
Yeah, so we have chosen our theme, as you rightly said, on sustainable and inclusive development. On the sustainability part, I think we have covered a little bit, saying we need to address issues like climate change and net zero emission. How do we control fossil fuels, get into renewable sources of energy? On the inclusive development part, I think we need to build business models which will make more entrepreneurs in Goa. And I think the chamber has rightly focused this time. We have a startup task force under Mr. Lalit Saraswat, whereby we try and network and get all like minded people. It is really heartening to see the number of people settle down in Goa, you know, and those who conduct very good business models, who conduct viable businesses which serve through the state of Goa, which serves all over the country. Now, how do we get the Goan the Goan employers to be a part of this? So we have created a unique network of a startup kind of a, you know, you can say it's like a club whereby they meet in chamber about 3-4 times a year to discuss ideas, to ideate, and then from those ideas to serve on policy issues to the government of Goa. I must say that we get a lot of support, we get a lot of response from the IT minister, from the government at large, and we are trying to build, for example, the nomad policy that was recently announced. I think we have had a lot of deliberations with the IT department, with the IT minister, with the startup scenario in Goa. So, and that gets built on. So, chamber has a specific role and responsibility to provide that network and that forum for entrepreneurs to assemble at one place, to ideate, to come out with ideas, and then through the policy advocacy to the government, create opportunities for Goan youth. Because most of the Goan youth are only focused on employment. When I said inclusive, why don't you make them as employers rather than employees, and make them as entrepreneurs? So I think that is the idea that the chamber has propagated, and I'm glad to say that we have begun in the first year, but we want to build it in the second year going forward.
Which also brings me to the question that a lot of top notch, academically well qualified Goan youth choose to go outside Goa shores to make a career for themselves. How are we going to bridge this gap between the academic excellence and industry?
So I think this is a very valid question, and I think your observations are right. We have some of the very fine academic institutions in Goa. You know, we've we are trying. We've got the NIT, the IIT is something that is there, but we need to build it on a larger scale. We've got very good technical institutes. We got a medical college. We got private institutions like the BITS Pilani. So if you see the whole ecosystem of education, it's getting built slowly. Where I think we lack is on the lower education front, where there are very good schools, but probably more schools need to be developed on the IB model. And I think the government is making an effort in trying to seek that good schools come to Goa. So not only the Goans get an opportunity, but on neighboring states also. I think we should look at education also as an industry, because Goa provides the right environment, Goa provides the right vibe for good educational institutes to come. Now, this is one part. The second part is products coming out of these good schools apparently don't stay in Goa, except for very few. So we need to analyze the reasons why are enough opportunities not given to these so-called engineers, so-called doctors, so-called IT professionals, so that we can attract them and we can try and retain talent. Others, probably what will happen is this will be then an aging population. One way we have people who come to Goa because they love Goa, and rightfully so. One is we may use them productively, as I said earlier, into getting them together, harnessing their resources and their mental abilities to create that environment, to create the right kind of industrial scenario and the right kind of business scenario in Goa. Right now, what is happening is all these youth that you're talking about say there are no jobs for them. The kind of jobs that are having. So I think we have to come to the skill building mismatch. So one way we have pharma industry, we have to some extent we are just getting on the bandwagon of IT industry, but there are a few IT companies who are here. We have consumer durables, then we have our other manufacturing units like the steel units, the small steel units, and then we have the mining industry which is going to start again, and so on. The pharmaceutical industry is here in a big way. So can we look at what kind of talent that is required, okay, and then discuss with the educational institutes as to why aren't they producing that talent? Because one way we say that our boys are going somewhere else, our girls are going somewhere else, and one way the industry here complains that they're not getting the right product. So there is some mismatch happening. So two ways we can build on the employment potential. One is to see the skill mismatch, and the other is to get the kind of industries, the new age industries, whether we call it, now the IT has a different connotation. We have to look at AI, quantum computing, AR, VR, and Goa probably could be the right environment for it. But we don't have the ecosystem right now in place. So whether through with the chamber, with the government, with other industry bodies like CII, whether we can do a proper framework, a proper policy build up, proper ease of doing business in this particular sector, and then go and market Goa. Because marketing without all this infrastructure in place doesn't make sense. Then it just becomes a trip to somewhere, just market, we'll take the honorable CM, we come back and we can't deliver. So I think it's right time now that everybody sits together, introspects, gives the right kind of environment, give the policy feedback to the government so that we create enough incentives. And by saying incentives is today people don't look much at financial incentives. They want ease of doing business. They want the right of talent to be harnessed, because unless you get talent, why would they come here? So there is a mismatch in terms of engineers that are being produced and engineers that they want. And the ones which are produced are moving out and getting jobs at Google and Facebook. So it is, it's an egg and chicken story. We haven't got those companies as yet here. Goa is a promising place where this kind of industries can come, but we haven't been able to kickstart that investment.
Asking you a specific question on specific sectors, I would like to understand where do you see Goa startup scene today? As somebody who is very passionate about startups, uh, I personally feel that there is a mismatch in terms of local startups and mature startups. As somebody who has invested heavily in startups, how do you look at this game?
So, Harsh, I agree with you that the startup scene is very nascent, but there are lots of people who have ideas. And I think I would strongly send through your channel, urge and send a strong message to the youth that they must look at solving problems. Businesses emerge out of solving problems. So unless you solve a problem, why did iron ore industry start in during the World War II in Goa? Because the Suez Canal was blocked. They could not get ore from the other side of the world. And that's where, when there was a certain amount of prospecting happening on mining in Goa, that's where they realized there's mining in Goa. There's iron ore deposited in Goa. And that's how many families like ours converted that into a business proposition. Now, where do we learn this? Because right now, as you rightly said, Bangalore created that hub for a startup. They had all the ecosystem in place. The government went full gungo. They invited people. They created an ecosystem. The educational institutes developed simultaneously. Okay. And the whole vibe was created that Bangalore is a great startup place. Okay. We missed that bus. So that is why I think we need to create our own niche area within IT, within startup, saying that this is what we promise and this is what we'll deliver. What do you want to promise? We want to promise a good life to those people. Educational institutes have to come up. Okay. We need to create great bandwidth connectivity, because unless you digitalize today, no businesses can survive. So we need great bandwidth connectivity and we need ease of doing business. Somebody who comes should not struggle for land, should not struggle for real estate space. So I think the whole ecosystem has to move together. And with this and the right kind of marketing, Goa leads least amount of marketing, because Goa is recognized as an international brand. What is we still have to do is to attach the business seriousness with that international brand, which is known only on the coastal tourism. So I think, as you said, there's no rocket science in this. You know, as I said, great bandwidth connectivity, great ecosystem, great climate, because all these are youngsters. They have young kids. They want great schools to go to. They want a great social, vibrant life. So if you put all this in place and you create vibrant communities, I think automatically then people follow. And that is what we want. Today we get people, but we get them in bits and pockets. So if you want to create something like a Bangalore, with of course our own niche, I don't think we should become Bangalore, because Bangalore has all its other problems now. It's grown too big. Yesterday Mr. Prabhu made a very valid statement that we also need to see a carrying capacity of the state. So I think when we read the carrying capacity, what is the kind of people that you need to attract and go is something from an employment perspective, from an entrepreneurship perspective. So if you look at all the new age areas, can we look at pharma research? Well, we have enough pharmaceutical industries. So you attract a different kind of a crowd. Okay. Can you specifically concentrate on AI? So I think these are things then, and then from there will emerge which are the startups in AI, whether we can attract them, come and set up shop here. We will give you all the enabling infrastructure. I think that's how you create an enabling environment for these sectors to come. And that's how then Goans will get integrated into it. Right now, what happens is, as you said, we are in a very nascent stage. It is not hitting, although I have committed some money to many of the Goan startups. I think we still have, we are still not, no, we are still not known in that world. You know, we we are far beyond, other than one unicorn that we have of Mr. Sriram. The others can't even dream to be Sunicorn at this stage, forget a unicorn. So I think, where do we take them? What is the sectors that they will drive on? How do we give them the necessary, because nobody will put money unless they see a viable business model in it. Okay. Today, as a Goan, I may feel that you are a startup, I may give you a little bit of money. But once that is burnt away, how does he manage the scale? So one is building your dreams, executing them, for which you need this entire ecosystem around you. So that's why I say that Goa should focus on what startups, because startup is becoming a very broad word now. What can Goa offer to them? And then focus on getting startups in that particular sector, so that then Goa becomes uniquely known for those kind of startups.
You also spoke to us about mining. How do you look at mining coming back into play now?
I mean, I hope and pray that mining comes back. I think it's a great enabler for the economy. It's a great employment potential for the economy. And it works very well with tourism, because tourism is on the coastal belt and mining is in the interiors. So it provides a very balanced model of development. Okay. We have some teething problems. Recently, as Chamber, we went to the Honorable Chief Minister. It again boils down to how do we implement the new leases and how do we kickstart the business there. Now, since mining was closed for the last 7-8 years, it's again taking its time to sort of bounce back, to get the village people into confidence, because there are issues related to transportation, logistics, all this needs to fall in place. And unless there is a buy-in from the local population, we will not be able to implement mining on the scale as before. So I think it's everyone's responsibility. One is we now have to focus, and again, I'm driving home the point of sustainable development and inclusivity. We have to focus on sustainable mining. Because gone are the days of the earlier days. Today, the population density on land is increased. Okay. Everybody's affluence level has gone up. So the expectations of people vis-a-vis environmental balance, vis-a-vis other infrastructure has also gone up. When the expectations of the population gone up, we need to look at new technology in mining. We need to look at new ways of transportation. Now that has its own social problems. One of the suggestions which was put is, instead of putting 8-tonner trucks, why don't you put 25-tonner trucks? So to that extent, the population of trucks get reduced and the pollution gets reduced. Now, the village people are also dependent on this livelihood. So we have to sit with the government and work out on all. Then can we, to reduce the dust impact, can we start transportation through belt conveyors, which close belt conveyors? Now there are lots of systems like this. Can we look at how do we treat the tailings in the ponds, the waste tailings? So, all these things have to be looked at, which will ultimately drive to sustainable mining models. And this is again, we can follow best practices elsewhere in Brazil, Australia, where mining is going on. So that our own Goa, where we want to completely protect our ecosystem with sustainable mining operations, because you can't overlook mining. Mining will give government a revenue of 3 to 4,000 crores every year with the few mining leases that they've allotted now. So once the entire process is done, the figure may be much larger. So how can anybody overlook the revenue potential, the employment potential, which will ultimately benefit the Goan population? But we need responsible mining. We need sustainable mining. I think on that theme, we should all work towards starting mining operations.
Also, the Goa Chamber has been a very fierce advocate of bringing reforms so far as the power sector is concerned. If you could give us some pointers on this.
Sure. I think we must keep one thing in mind, Harsh, that Goa has a substantial disadvantage that we don't have our own power generation. Now, you may say that the power generation was never there. It's a small state. So, we have our own limitations in terms of, again, coal is not a very desired commodity in Goa. So, the expectations of the people have to match with the growth development plans of the state. However, I feel that it is the right time. Now, Goa should focus on renewable sources of energy. We could look at solar power, we could look at wind power, we could look at more than wind power. I would say that you could look at developing power through water flow, because we have enough water in the state of Goa. We have rivers where we could generate, maybe through barges, put up equipment on barges and generate. Now we need expert resources in this front to study and generate power. Now, there have been different views. The chamber has openly advocated supporting the Tanmar power project, of course, with environmental protection, environmental balance. We at no point have said that you should overlook environmental concerns and go for Tanmar power project. So, with all this, I think, one way we want, chamber advocates industrialization of Goa, more industry in Goa, and at the same time, we are saying that the power situation is bad. So how do we do? And the only solution that is available today to sustain power is power rates being increased. Now, how will industry be able to afford that every few years the power rates go up and the power availability comes down? So rates have to go hand in hand with power availability. Quality of power has an issue. Okay, transmission lines have an issue. Okay, and the rates are going up. Okay, so how does an industry face this challenge of maintaining, because any industry needs today power, and leave alone industry, you look at the number of real estate projects coming up, that also will consume power.
Lots of
So
power.
how are you going to balance the aspirations of the people of Goa? As I said, people are getting affluent, which is a wonderful thing. You look at Goa of earlier years and Goa of today's years, people are much more affluent today, which is a great thing because the country is developing, Goa is developing. But at the same time, our basic infrastructure has to be in place. And power is deficient in the state. We all accept it. And with the kind of power growth rates projected, we have to depend more and more on your neighboring states for power. Is that a wise thing to do? And some stage, if their requirement goes up and if they start cutting down on supplying power to you, where do you stand? So I would say seriously look at projects like Tanmar with enough environment protection. We can appoint the best consultant in the world to give us the most greenfield, the green kind of a power plant in Tanmar. The second is renewable sources of energy. I'm hearing that there are not serious takers for solar power in Goa. I think we need to analyze the reasons. As chamber, we are also responsible to sit with the government and make the policy more conducive. Then, as we can say, hydel generation of power, as I explained to you with water, wind probably Goa may not be very suitable because we don't have those great wind speeds. So these kind of alternatives of power should be looked at. And as I said, industry will grow and residential will grow. And how will you balance the two? So power is a very, very important issue. I think at chamber we are completely sensitized to it, and our industry committee and the supporting committees are looking into this situation, and we constantly engage with the government in trying to have a more conducive policy for additional power generation and quality power generation.
You also had some new thoughts about pushing the tourism policy for the state. Yeah, could you elaborate?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I think, Goa is a brand. It's an international brand. Everybody knows about Goa. I think there's enough um sort of economic activity which Goa has created with tourism. But I think, again, if you consider the number of tourists coming to Goa, it's minuscule compared to a Thailand or compared to a Singapore. I'm leave aside, Europe and places like that. So we have to look at scalability in tourism. Now, how will you scale tourism? Okay. Can we look at quality tourism? Can we look at upmarket tourism? Let this tourism go on. We don't want to disturb, because what I see is, and I'm very happy to see, the number of Indian tourists coming to Goa. I think that's where we see real wealth generated in the country. And the way they spend in Goa is something that is really heartening. Earlier, we used to depend only on foreign tourists. And I am actually happy that we are not depending so much on foreign tourism now. Of course, foreign tourists should come, but we are also having a large number of Indian tourists. But what next? Whether we can create more revenues, we can create more GDP for the state, whether we can create more jobs for the state. So we have to look at different aspects of Goa. We have lovely heritage, okay? We have we can have lovely medical facilities where we could look at medical tourism. I think, somebody like a Victor Group has already done it, but it's a small thing. Why can't we look at a bigger scale? Why can't we look at more players, in medical tourism, in wellness tourism? Okay, heritage, we have such wonderful heritage structures. You and I go to Europe and pay 50 pounds and 30 pounds to enter a church or any other museum. Why can't we create those kind of monument? I mean, we have monuments, but
But
we
we
create
monetize
that
the one.
environment, monetize and keep the maintenance. Unless you unless somebody feels like it's worth paying that $30. Now, people are smart. Why would you pay and go unless you get the kind of service? So we have to create the aura around it, and then we have to create tourism around it. We have to create business models around it. Can we have museum shops around? Can we have eateries around? Now, if you look at the riverside along here near our office, evening, why doesn't it become a vibrant place like somewhere in Spain? So you have nice barbecue shops, or have nice cafeterias, and that can happen only in the evening once people go home, or during office time when people go home. So we need to create new models of tourism and say how they could benefit Goa. So I think, if we can sit down and create those models for Goa, inviting the experts, because we have enough experts in our own committee, as you know, but there are enough groups in Goa today. Taj Group has 8 or 9 hotels in Goa, you know. Then there are other groups like the Marriott, the Hyatt. Why can't we systematically engage with him? Well, it's again to their benefit, you know. Today, if Goa is creating so much thousands of crores of GDP in tourism, how can we multiply it by 3 times? And these are the projects that I talked to you about, wellness tourism, medical tourism, heritage tourism. Whether we can create, you know, in between there used to be some news about having these ropeways and this. We need to create those to be world class, because we have all gone and seen what world class means in the other parts of the world. Then only you will have the paying capacity of people, because today people can afford to pay, but they need value for their money. And I think Goa has a huge potential in upping the tourism. Of course, tourism right now contributes majorly towards GDP, but I think that could easily go up 3 to 4x, according to me.
The chamber also has been a very strong advocate and a facilitator of the ease of doing business agenda for the state of Goa. Uh, how is the progress happening in the spirit, not in the letter of the ease of doing business?
So I would say both. It's work in progress. I think that's Chamber's major duty. That's the expectation of our members. All these future talks and all is very good, but members ask us, what about the GST problem I'm facing? What about that license? What about documents getting cleared at sub registrar's office? So these are the innumerable problems that we get feedback from members in our regular meetings with them through all our subcommittees, and we constantly engage with the government. We constantly write to the government. We constantly engage with the bureaucrats. We constantly engage with the ministers. I must say that the response has been great. Every time we've gone, right from the Honorable CM to the Chief Secretary to the various secretaries of the Government of Goa to all the ministers and to all the officers of the Government of Goa. But everything can't be done overnight. You know, we've got a few of our suggestions. For example, we made a few suggestions in the GST to the Honorable Chief Minister when he went. And to our satisfaction, a few of them got resolved. But that's again work in progress. I think the government is now seized of the idea that unless you have ease of doing business, entrepreneurs have a choice to go to other states. So apart from local entrepreneurs like you and me, we want to attract entrepreneurs from all over and set up shop in Goa. So once we are clear with our policy blueprint, industrial policy blueprint, I think the next job is to say that right from start to stop, the ease of doing business has to be seamless. And I think with the bodies like the Investment Promotion Board, recently with a lot of sittings through the IDC has come up with an exit mechanism. Now that is all a part of the government working, the IDC working, and chambers like us, the GSI, CII, all working together to make sure that ultimately Goan industry benefits. So I think it's work in progress. There's been happening again. We had made, because a lot of people said that because of the heavy workload in the sub registrar's office in MAPSA, that documents are not getting cleared. Now we made a suggestion to the CM to make it like a centralized depository, government centralized depository, and wherever there is less work, those files could always be diverted. It's like a digital seamless thing where if there's too much work in MAPSA, it can go to Pedne, it can come to Panjim. Now the CM has already cleared that in the budget. So that was one of the chamber's recommendation and CREDI's recommendation to do it. So I think the idea is that we constantly engage with the government, tell what problems our members are going through, and make a constant effort. Now sometimes things happen, sometimes don't happen, but I think we should not give up. We should continue with our efforts until they bear fruit, so that is real service to our members on their day to day managing of the businesses.
As a chamber president, what would you like to be a legacy project of yours so that future teams of the chamber can emulate and take it forward?
I think one thing that we must take very seriously is this sustainability issue. I think every business today has to be done responsibly. There are no shortcuts, and the whole idea of having a theme, because earlier chamber never had a theme. The whole idea of having the theme was to drive home the point that the government will do its job, the NGOs will do their job, the industry also has to do its job. So what happens is these issues don't hound you every day. Like you said, ease of doing business, it hounds me every day. So this has to be a constant policy of the chamber, that we keep on educating our membership through training, workshops, getting of adequate resources, to getting experts in the field, to tell the people what's happening in the other parts of the country and other parts of the world. So the legacy for the chamber would be that we continue to do responsible business, and wherever the chamber has to intervene for its membership, it continues to intervene in policy advocacy with the government so that businesses thrive in Goa. They not only survive, but they thrive in Goa. And we also conduct business responsibly, because we have a responsibility towards this state. We all are born in this state. We come from this state. So I think as industrialists or business people, as entrepreneurs, through the chamber as a body, as a prime body or a premier body, let us strive Goa to be a very prosperous place for everyone, where the people of Goa, vis-a-vis their expectations from industry, are met with. Because people have certain aspirations, business people have certain aspirations. Those aspirations, the chamber has to see that they all come in line and get streamlined. And then through policy advocacy with the government, they are driven home through the government and made into legislations and laws.
Baba, you are known in Goa as a youth icon. People look up to you for ideas, for entrepreneurial excellence. What is your message to youngsters who want to strike it on their own as entrepreneurs?
The first message should be that there is no business without risk taking. You know, so I think I would strongly urge the young people of Goa to take risks. Of course, to take calculated risks. You should not shoot in the air without knowing where your aim is. Once you have that courage to take the risk, you have to see what problems you can solve in the state. Money should never be your focal point. Money is a side effect. The day you start a business with the objective of making money, you can start as a job of making money. Even otherwise, now the definition of job is changing. If you ask youngsters, many youngsters ask me why I should join you. They need a purpose. They said salary is given. If I am so and so and I'll get so much salary, it is given. But why should I join you? What is the purpose of your business? So I think every youth, every young person who wants to get into the bandwagon of entrepreneurship should try to solve the problems of Goa, should try to solve the problems of nation, and work towards that as a business idea. Because if they first say that my first objective is to make money, that business never sees the light of the day. Or it sees the light of the day and dies very soon. Okay. So I think passion, the daring to dream, taking the courage to execute it, okay, and trying to be useful to the community and society through solving of the problems will drive business ideas in the future. And I would strongly urge all the young people to focus on these aspects so that we want more and more entrepreneurs. At the end of the day, business is all about executing ideas which get cleared in your mind and generated in your mind and my mind. Now, hundreds of these ideas, only 2 ideas get built. So we need more and more people to be encouraged to think like this and then carry it to its logical end, because otherwise they die as dreams and they never get built.
Over the last 1 year as the president of Goa Chamber, you have also initiated a very interesting program called Leaders at GCCI, where some very fascinating and very interesting people have come and shared their ideas and knowledge with us. What was the idea of doing this initiative?
Yeah, so the whole idea, as I said earlier, is our membership has to get exposed. There are a lot of things happening in the world. What is happening? One is geopolitics today is driving a lot of business opportunities. Number two, digitalization is going at a huge pace and in a very fast pace. Maybe COVID sort of aggravated it, but now there's no looking back. There's no business, as you know, there's no business which can thrive without digitalization. The third thing is the the reason why people are in business is changing. Today the biggest job of a CEO is not to go and meet governments, drive strategy, is to look after its people, because they are the ones who drive the work for you. So I think with this changes expectations, we want to hear from leaders like who we have got in the past for the JCCI business leaders. We want to know from them what's happening in the world and how are we placed uniquely sitting in India to build on the challenges and the opportunities that are given to us. So if you see most of our theme, it is around what's happening elsewhere in the world and how can Goa benefit from it. So we definitely intend building on this for the next year. I've lined up at least 3 to 4 new speakers for this year, so that we continue to build on the ideas, and then it gives ideas, networking opportunities to members in terms of making differences in their own businesses. That was the whole idea behind doing it.
As president and leader of the oldest cross-sectoral uh, business organization in Goa and largely this part of the world, what is your message to business owners in Goa? Your members, your affiliates. How do you want them to bolster their confidence in running their businesses in Goa?
I think I would say the future is very positive. I think we are extremely lucky to be in India at this time. There's no other economy in the world which is growing at 7%. Okay. We are uniquely placed in geopolitics. Everybody is looking to India. We have no favoritism for Russia and Ukraine, whether it's Hamas and Israel. India has got great brownie points with everyone. So I think this is the time that we have to think on a larger scale, take opportunities, and when you are in Goa, don't just sit with the idea that I will be only in Goa. You can be in Goa, but you can think globally. One of the ideas that emerged we had a workshop with Bombay Stock Exchange, and I said, why aren't entrepreneurs going to list their companies in the MSME segment? And then I requested Mr. Santosh Kekre. I said, you can be their mentor. I said, this is how entrepreneurs should think. You know, otherwise, every time you are only into your own business, you finish 9 to 5, and then you are happy with what you've achieved. Of course, you've done a great job. Running an industry is no mean feat. But it's time that we move on and we think larger. Goa has to be also known, other than the tourism image. Let's make Goa also known as the entrepreneurship hub of India, and that can happen only if entrepreneurs change their mindsets. You need to change your mindset. You need to think bigger. Now you may say that it's easy for you to talk because you have resources. Some are small people. Everybody, if he thinks big, finance can be added later. All the people who are big today have started very small. So take examples of those and think how big you can be in the future. That would be my message to our membership and all the entrepreneurs in Goa.
The other challenging aspect of doing business in Goa is a perception challenge for people from out of Goa. People
Yeah.
don't really believe that you actually do serious work sitting down in Goa. How should the industry change that perception?
So I think it's up to us. I think also the chamber has a role to play. The government has a role to play. When we've had this discussion over the last 40 minutes, if we can prove 2 to 3 things to the world that we mean business, automatically the perception will change. We talked about startup, we talked about a different model for tourism, you know, we talked about how we can build new age industries, we talked about whether we can specifically add segments of IT in Goa. Now we need to make a beginning in this. Okay, we need to show to the world that ABCD of the world has come to Goa, to set up shop here. Unless that happens, how did Bangalore develop? Because they had those big names come and set up shop. And because the government in Karnataka during Mr. S.M. Krishna's time made all the noise that we want to be IT place, we want to be IT place. So marketing along with, the setup, the infrastructure in place that is required. See, if everything goes hand in hand, then you develop that environment. And if you develop that environment, then the perception changes. So while we continue to build on our tourism brand, which is a great brand, I think, and we should focus on adding value to tourism, we should also look at other industries, which may be non-polluting, which may be like knowledge industry, which may be a different kind of other. So, for example, when Mr. Piyush Goyal came last time, I think you were there.
Yeah, I was there.
We talked about the semiconductor industry. I mean, Goa has to make a beginning. We have to go and pitch. We have to create enough policy in Goa to say that we invite anybody who has seriousness in this particular sector to come and invest. And then we have to look at the land. We have to look at other infrastructure, because we can't tell an outside person, no, you find land for yourself. It's okay to tell us because we are local people. And a big industry coming from out would not waste their time and energy into discovering, trying to negotiate with private people on where the land is. So I think we need to create blocks, we need to create estates where we are serious about, whether it's electronics, whether it's anything else. So I know that they made to a electronic city,
Clusters.
but can we make it world class? Can we really provide world class infrastructure, as I said? And we should engage with the best experts in the world to see that those are provided. Otherwise, why would people come? You and I are going, so we feel it. For a foreigner or an outsider from Goa, unless you make it compulsive for him to come and make it, because he's in the business of business, he has to generate profits. Doesn't happen.
Mr. Dempo, I would like to ask you a very offbeat question. Is it time for a state like Goa to think like a country? And will you be the Sherpa who will marshal top brands of businesses from across the world into Goa so that Goa gets a bigger image, bigger platform to play in the business zone?
See, I would look at it in another way. I think every state in the country has a right to think like a country to attract investments. But then we have to also follow it up with deliverables. Because only by marketing, saying that you want to get ABCDs of the world, and not giving enough policy direction or infrastructure in place, because this is the only 2 things that an industry requires. that should also be of the kind that the country thinks of. So I think, to answer your question, yes, everybody has a right to dream. I think to some extent, at some stage, Andhra Pradesh did that. You know, they thought on their own. They tried to get world-class universities. They tried to get world-class factories, world-class companies, and they thought themselves like a country. So I think Goa, though is a smaller state, is uniquely placed to think like that in certain sectors of the economy. I'm very humbled that you asked me a question whether I'll be Sherpa in any responsibility. I'm part of the business fraternity here. And I think as a part of business fraternity and as a part of a member of a very old family in business, it would be my pleasure, it would be my honor. I always, whenever I go, I always mark it about Goa. But we must have substantial substance and meat to say where the investments will come. Okay. Once that is done, and once the government and the people of Goa, government with the aspirations of the people of Goa decide, then we can go full hog and say that we want the Googles and Facebooks of the world to come and invest here. But I think first we have to get our house in order, all the supporting infrastructure in order, so that, we are very, very confident that these companies can take a very hard look at investing in this state.
It has been an absolute pleasure listening to you and to your ideas, and I hope Goa listens to you and takes the state in the right step in terms of business. Thank you very much, Mr. Shrinivas Dempo. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks, Harsh. Thanks for having me, and I really enjoyed doing this and talking to you. Thank you
very much.